It's the Third World Theater series, and my mom worked with Third World Theater series. When she came up here, I had just had my second child. That's when my daughter Raina was born, and my mother came up here to help me. And she had another play. My mother and I were writing a play together, and it was a sequel to her first play. And so she being an elder, she had an opportunity to find a job for herself and get paid by Highland Valley Elder Services, and they had an office here, and so she could choose any job she wanted. And so she says, "I'm going to go over to Third World Theater Series and see if I can do something there." And Roberta hired her, and my mother was paid by Highland Valley Elder Services. Soon after that, the name changed, and they did a whole new branding, and it became New World Theater. And that's when I started working with New World Theater because I was a student. I was with University Without Walls, and so you could do all these special projects in the field that you're studying. And so all my special projects I did through New World Theater. Well, I started directing for New World Theater because I started taking my directing classes, and I directed a piece, not with New World Theater. I directed a piece down in Springfield, Alice Childress's Wine in the Wilderness. And Roberta Uno came to see it. And she said, "No, I want to produce this." And so she produced it that following year with New World Theater. And so that was the first piece that I directed for them. And it was so well received, I just continued. She would bring scripts to me. She said, "Read this. If you like it, I would love for you to direct it." And so that's how it went. She would share scripts with me, and I would choose one that I liked. And so I directed a lot of shows for New World Theater and performed in a lot of shows there as well. And Gregory Dean was a part of that scene also. It was 30 years when they got shut down. It was 30 years, and I think Roberta was with them, with New World Theater. That was her baby. She created that. I remember when she had a little cubicle when it was Third World Theater Series, a little cubicle in the Student Union building. And because I'll never forget, my mother wanted to meet her to see if she could, do some work there. And we go in Student Union building, and we're looking for an office. Well, there was this huge office with all these little cubicles. And so New World Theater was the size of this area that I'm sitting in now. We found Roberta there. But she ran it like it was a big conglomerate. She had big vision. And New World Theater, was born soon after that, a few years after that. And then she got big office space at Hasbrook. And then her office space moved to Roberta was very savvy and strategic. And then she ended up, her office was in the theater department at UMass, And she's a brilliant producer. I have to give her that. She's a brilliant producer. And she was a good director. She's directed me in a couple of pieces for New World Theater. That's how I learned so much about apartheid and what was going on in South Africa, because South Africa, there was a blackout. Unless you were in the know, or political, you really didn't know. You didn't see anything on television. You didn't hear anything about what was going on in South Africa. I knew very little because I used to go to these meetings when I still lived in Boston, and I met a couple of exiled South Africans, and I became interested in that history and what was going on, because that history parallels the history of African Americans in terms of racism and how that worked. Apartheid was just there, Jim Crow, and it actually was modeled off of the Jim Crow system. Yeah, Yeah. New World Theater lasted for 30 years. I think Roberta was stayed with New World Theater for about 25 years, and then she left and she moved to New York to work for the Ford Foundation. That's when I noticed the change, the big change in New World Theater. They weren't bringing in other productions from other companies. Like I said, Roberta used to bring all of these plays from South Africa, these touring companies that were telling the stories, like the plays like Master Harold and the Boys, Asinamali, Born in the RSA, Sheila's Day, all of these. My mother worked on Sheila's Day. All of these plays that tell the stories of what was going on in South Africa in real time. So we had the New World Theater Ensemble, we actors, where Gregory Dean was a part of that ensemble as well. But then she would bring in all these other, and so the Pan Asian company from, I think they're from San Francisco. Then she would bring in other African American theater companies to come and perform. She brought the Beijing, helped to not, yeah, she was part of helping to bring the Beijing opera here, and they came and did a workshop with New World Theater. And so no, it was very multicultural. It was a multicultural theater company. She had a lot of support from Dr. Tillis, from Fred Tillis. Not much support from the theater department, but she ended up kind of like getting into that department in a real way. But it was hard, There were some people that gave her, that they just did not want to see this amazing, phenomenal company, production company, because it was a production company, no doubt about it. And she's one hell of a producer. But she had a hard time, and she just was fed up. And I think after 25 years, she was like, you know what, this greener pastures. I'm going where I'm going to be appreciated. She put in a really amazing artistic director, to take over by the name of Talvin Wilkes. He's a brilliant playwright and producer, and he kept it going for a time, but they gave him such a hard time at the university. I mean, if you don't have the support, there's only so much that you can do, and then you get frustrated and you leave. And then another person came through, and same thing. And so they went through artistic directors over a span of 5 years. I think they had like maybe 4 or 5 artistic directors. And with each one, the focus and the vision changed. Nobody could really keep the vision that Roberta, the legacy that she left. The lack of strong leadership was why it was so easy to close them down. And that was very sad. And that was in 2009 when they closed it down. And that was the year that I moved back from South Africa. I had been in South Africa for 10 years. I moved back, and I had a show, a play that I had conceived based on the writings of the pilgrims, of some of the pilgrims from the pilgrimage, and I put it together in a performance piece. Beautiful play. And it needed some work and needed some rewrites, and so New World Theater used to have this summer program, and it was a play lab. It was called New World Theater Play Lab, and so I was chosen that year to be a part of the New World Theater Play Lab, where I could work on the play, hone it, and really polish it up, and then it was going to be produced through New World Theater at the beginning of the fall semester. Well, the students left in May, and in July is when they gave New World Theater the axe. Everybody got their pink slips. And so, of course, my show didn't get produced. But worse than that, because I can always get my show produced somewhere, is that this institution no longer existed for all these young artists, up and coming artists. That was a real heartbreaking thing to have happen, because New World Theater was a sacred and safe place for young art, especially young artists of color that came onto this campus wanting to learn theater. New World Theater was there with open arms always for these young students, and that was so sad that happened. But they waited until the students were gone before they did it, because it would have been big protests.